Hello, my splendiferous art sluts. This is Allison Moon, and you are listening to Artgasm. On today's episode, I speak with two of my favorite human beings working in the sex field, Bitsy LaBourbon and Jimaneika Eborn of Cabaret Consensual, which is a burlesque performance variety show all about rape culture and conversations around consent, and also the parent organization More Than No, which is an educational nonprofit seeking to help people have these conversations in empowering and thoughtful ways. They are wonderful human beings, and I'm so excited that you're here to listen to them talk brilliantly about the work that they do. Before we get to that, I wanted to share another story, another story about consent and art. I promise I have other interests, but this topic just seems to be this incredibly deep well of ideology worth exploring. So the story goes like this. Photographer Michael E. Northrup took a series of photographs of his wife from the years 1978 to 1988. They are intimate, curious snapshots of a marriage. We see his wife on her wedding day, and then pregnant, and then lactating, and then with her infant. It's all very pastoral, beautiful, intimate, and sometimes odd, but incredibly artful. And it captures this intimacy in a way that photography does better than pretty much any other art form. The photographs have contemporary relevance because Northrup and his wife divorced in 1988, but the series is just getting its debut with a publication of the photos in an art book. So what makes this story relevant is that some of the press that Northrup has done to promote the book raises some questions. The most telling quote, perhaps, is in Sleek magazine. Northrup says, quote, "She hasn't seen it yet. If she likes it, that would make me immensely happy. And if she doesn't, that's her problem." Which, okay, that's understandable. Many models never see, let alone approve, the publication of their images. Right of refusal is a privilege only ever offered to celebrities and powerful subjects sometimes, and even then, not all the time. But when it's your ex-wife, why doesn't she get a say? So I learned of this story via The Establishment, thanks to the writer Aaron McLeod, who did some great resource gathering and reporting that added a lot more emotion and dimension to this story. Because McLeod did a little digging into Northrup's ex-wife's opinions and found that, actually, according to Northrup himself, his ex asked for the pictures not to be published. His lawyer sent a letter to her after she said no, and she never responded. So Northrup felt that it was his right to proceed with publication. There's a really telling exchange on a photography blog between Northrup and the photographer Blake Andrews. That's worth reading in its entirety. It's really short, but it's a number of exchanges that raise interesting questions. I'll link to both that and the Establishment article in the show notes. So where this story moves from ownership rights, legality, and copyright and into some uglier stuff is really when Northrup essentially keeps on digging. The piece that I latched onto in the email exchange that Erin McLeod also points out in her piece is that when pressed about the moral and ethical questions, as opposed to the legal ones, Northrup kind of doubles down and repeatedly mentions that his ex... This part drives me crazy. He mentions that his ex has posed nude for other photographers with no complaints, so why the hell should she tell her ex-husband he can't also publish nude photos of her? Which I'm sure many other women listening could recognize that as textbook slut-shaming. You got naked for other guys, why won't you get naked for me? It's essentially what he's saying there. Now, there's likely plenty of personal family drama in this situation that I nor anyone but the two subjects in the story will ever truly understand, and I'm of the belief that there are many things that should not be decided in the court of public opinion. And that's kind of the point. You shouldn't have to have a palatable reason, a publicly satisfying answer, to why you don't want something to happen to your body. And by Northrup essentially requiring his ex to offer a reason that satisfies his concerns about why she doesn't want these pictures published, well, he's enacting some very old stories about expectation of ownership of women's bodies. So yeah, is it legal to publish these photos? It seems so. Is it ethical? I don't know. I'm not so sure. It also raises interesting questions about consent in general. There's been a movement over the past few years in some of the more radical sex education fields to understand sexual consent as revocable, even retroactively. So, for example, maybe I had sex with somebody 10 years ago and I was enthusiastic and totally on board with it. But 10 years later, I get new information about myself or the circumstances or my partner maybe, and I reevaluate my choice at that time to consent. This is the kind of quandary that Me Too is bringing up for a lot of people. Things that we thought we were fine with, even happy about, once we get more understandings of things like power dynamic, gender roles, abusive patterns, intentionality, and all the other things that complicate sex, we may not feel as enthusiastic about that thing that happened. Then what? Now, personally, I believe that regret is an essential part of the human experience, and I don't believe that it's something we should expect to eradicate. Our decision-making processes are subject to innumerable variables. That's just life. And maybe someday we can think, geez, that guy was such a jerk, or damn, that woman was manipulating me, or wow, I didn't have enough self-confidence at the time to say no when I should have, or any of the other kinds of regrets we often have as sexual people in the world. And part of the problem is that those realizations can make us feel bad. Stupid, even. And we want to avoid feeling stupid about choices that we made. So we transmute it, maybe into rage or activism or depression or art or something else, to avoid having to feel like we made a stupid mistake. Should we be able to withdraw consent 20 years after the fact? Should someone who posed for photographs, fully aware of the photographer's intent to publish, disseminate, and profit from such images, should they get the right to say, actually, never mind, I revoke my consent? Interestingly enough, this actually brings to mind Vanessa Williams and other celebrities who posed nude before they were famous. What seems like a good choice at the time, get your rent paid, get some shots for a modeling portfolio, have a good time, that choice can feel real different when your personal brand shifts from sexy model to something else, like Miss America or First Lady, perhaps. Anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on this story. You can always leave comments, email me, tweet me, hashtagging ArtgasmCast so I can find them. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel a lot of things about it, and I'm curious how you feel about it as well. So, speaking of sexy models, there are a couple of fun new ways for you to get your hands on a copy of Girl Sex 101. First, sexy model Jiz Lee is selling copies on their store. They contributed an essay on squirting to the book, and they'll send you copies purchased through their store, and they will sign them. Jiz has a very cool way of signing books, and I suggest you get a copy from them to see what I mean if you are a fan. They also have a couple of limited edition hardcovers that come with the letterpress bookmark. Those are signed by me as well as Jiz. They are hand-numbered by me. They come with this letterpress bookmark that I told you about. Jiz is the only person other than me that sells these hardcovers. So if you want one from them, go to Jizlee, that's JIZLEE.bigcartel, that's BIGCARTEL.com, to check it out and to see what other books they offer, because they have a couple of other great books that they've contributed to as well. Also, a new LGBT bookstore in Glasgow, Scotland is now carrying Girl Sex 101, which is super cool. I'm excited for Scots to be able to support a local store to get my book. So if you're in Glasgow, get on over to Company Is Bookstore on, appropriately enough, Allison Street, and get yourself a copy. Also, if you're an indie bookstore or wholesaler that would like to sell Girl Sex 101 or any of my other books, you can always reach out to me at lunaticinc.com. You can see all the wholesale prices, you can reach out, and we can discuss how we can get you my books to sell. And if you are an indie retailer who already carries Girl Sex 101 or Bad Dyke or my werewolf books or whatever, and you would like a shout out on the podcast, let me know. I'm always eager to support indie stores, and I encourage customers to support indie stores as well. All right, so let's get to Bitsy and Jimaneika. Like I said, Bitsy LaBourbon and Jimaneika Eborn are two of my favorite human beings. I think that they're doing some really important stuff, particularly when it comes to giving survivors of sexual assault and violence outlets to express themselves artistically. Oftentimes, when we think about these narratives, they're, essays or tell-alls or something that feels like it's designed for bystander witnessing, kind of prurient interest stuff, as opposed to allowing victims and survivors to center their own experience of things and to be able to still express themselves fully in front of a loving audience. And this is what Cabaret Consensual does so beautifully. And this is what Jimaneika and Bitsy together are able to deliver to people. So I'm super excited to share this conversation with you. One thing that I will say is that I am very embarrassed to now have put out 2 back-to-back episodes with less than stellar sound quality. Jimaneika and Bitsy and I, we recorded outside of a hotel pool when we were at the Catalyst Con in Los Angeles, and it was fun for some sunshine and fresh air to take a break from all the hotel conferencing, but there were a lot of screaming children in that pool, and so you're going to pick up some of that sound quality. It's also really close to LAX. Oh, God. I'm sorry. I really want to do better for you. You can hear them fine. Again, we have a great conversation. It's not going to be too distracting, but allow this to be a plug for my Patreon. As you know, this podcast is a labor of love. I make $0 doing it, except for what people pledge at Patreon. So the big ones, the big goals that I have, first, getting transcripts for all the podcasts. This is for accessibility purposes, and I don't like that I don't have them right now. And I have to pay somebody else to do those because I just do not have time to do that, which is why I need a Patreon support that. Second is a digital recorder so that when I'm on the road, like I was in New York and in LA, that I can record better quality sound in general. So when you listen to any of those reporting stories on like This American Life or anywhere where you have the correspondents going to interview people, almost all the time they're using digital recorders. I'm just using a standard microphone, and there's a big difference in quality there. And so the microphone I want is a couple $100s, which I don't have right now, and Patreon supporters are helping me get to a place where I will actually be able to afford that. So hopefully sound quality like this will be a thing of the past, so that in the distant future, new podcast subscribers who are just discovering Artgasm will listen to the first 15 episodes and think, wow, what a primitive time that was. And of course, patrons get special stuff too, including special episodes that I make just for them. The most recent one is about deepfakes, revenge porn, and the ethics of consuming involuntary porn using celebrity faces. So check that out. You can do it at patreon.com/artgasm. That's patreon.com/artgasm. And you'll be able to see all the things there. All right, let's get on with the show with my interview with Jimaneika Eborn and Bitsy LaBourbon of Cabaret Consensual.
Hi.
Jimaneika.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for having us.
So, for those of you listening, we are sitting at poolside at LAX Hotel during the Catalyst Con conference. So it'll be a little bit more ambient noise than you might be used to, but hopefully we'll still message through loud and clear. So Bitsy, Jimaneika, so I wanted to talk to you because you run organization and a show that I think are really interesting about how we talk about sex these days. And so I would love to know about the organization, More Than No, and about Cabaret Consensual.
You got it. People always want to say it's so sexy.
I know.
Consensual.
So tell me about those programs and the show.
Okay, you want to do More Than No, and I'll do.
I feel like you should do More Than No because you got more deets.
Okay,
you
cool.
the starter.
More Than No is the nonprofit I founded a couple years ago now, 4 years ago, and basically I am an artist of various sorts, mostly dance and theater sorts, and I was very frustrated with the fact that I guess it shouldn't be a fact, I felt like I couldn't do anything to help survivors or allies of survivors because I'm not a cop, I'm not a judge, I am not a forensic scientist. I can't really do the backlogs of rape kits. So I was seeing rape a lot in the news, and I was like, like, what can I do? And so, coming from a theater and dance background, I went to UCLA for theater and performance art. I decided that I should go about it with art, and maybe that would at least get people interested enough to talk about it. And maybe if a cop came to my show, if a judge came to my show, if someone came in and really I was able to like recharge their social justice hard drives with art, they would then be able to spark more in the community to help survivors and allies.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense in terms of, do the kind of ways that art can actually affect activism. And I think sometimes artists can get jaded, thinking that we can't do anything, and at the same time, the carceral system is a hammer, and it treats everything like a nail. But survivors don't often need hammers.
Yeah,
they need other tools as well.
Yeah, we need kindness and understanding. And if I didn't say survivors of sexual assault, I think I said that. But yeah, we need kindness and understanding, and we also need people to listen to us, which is one of the things that art is really good for, is to make people stop and look at someone's perspective, often at first without commenting about it, but just like really taking it in. Like art of many kinds can do that in a way that like a speaker, like someone just giving you facts really can't. They can't make you feel empathy. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, art, whether it's singing or comedy or dance or a painting, like it can really make you stop and think in a very abstract way, which is what I think is necessary to get people excited to help.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what kind of things can we expect to see at a Cabaret Consensual? Like, what kinds of performances are there?
There's everything. I think that's kind of the best part. I remember I've only been a part of More Than No for a year, and like me joining, from my perspective, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I was like, oh, I've been doing mental health for like 10 years. And also like transitioning to like sex ed and like being like, oh, there's so much connection. And I saw her and I was like, oh, you're doing this thing. But also I feel like survivors need education, because a lot of times you don't know like what your options are. Like you don't know where to find the support. You're like, hey, no one's here and I'm alone. So having the education and having the support like allows for more growth. And with the show, when I first went to the show, I walked away and I was like, oh shit, like I have to be a part of this. And I was like, hey girl, just so you know. I actually wooed her over a bowl of ramen. I was like, hey, you want to work together?
And I was like, oh my God, someone's going to help me.
And look at us now. But you can see everything at the show. And I think that's the beautiful part, that there's something for everyone. There's singing, there's dancing. If you like a little peek of a titty, got a little stripping.
Yep. We've had clowns. You weren't there for the clowns.
I wasn't.
We've had clowns. We've had magicians. We had a sword swallower.
Really?
One time, a somewhat famous sword swallower, actually.
Hey.
We've had all sorts of things. And that's the stuff that I am good at really facilitating. And so adding Jimaneika and like adding like education was something I always wanted to do, but for me, my strength lies in producing. I can make an event like nobody's business.
It's true, I've seen her.
And film and dance and all of that. But I really wanted, more education. But the way to get people to fund things and to get them excited is to make it exciting.
But that's the trick.
That's the trick.
We weave in the education during the show.
That's the trickaroo.
Black History Month. I was like, also, here's another black fact for you.
Yeah, it was great. And I didn't even know that was going to happen. And I was like, look at this. We're all learning.
That's great. That's great.
People are like, ooh, education. Got me.
Yeah, and it's also like surprisingly served as, not surprisingly, but like when I first started Cabaret Consensual, which Cabaret Consensual's turning 3 this year.
Next week.
Next week.
You won't hear this, but yes.
And when I first started it, like the main reason was like, I want a fundraiser, like a regular fundraiser to fund what I want to do. And what has been even more valuable than it doing funds, because honestly, most of the funds go back to the performers and it goes back to like, making little survivor pins and things. But the thing that it actually really does is keep a community. engaged and focused. And it's like a place for survivors and allies to go and keep connected with us and stay on mission and stay remembering that, like, they're important. They deserve healthcare. They deserve to go find a therapist. They deserve to, you know, do art. If art makes, for me, art saved my life, like, as a survivor. So it's like what Cabaret Consensual really does is, like, keep people connected with sex educators or with therapists or with drama therapy or whatever their like self-healing is.
I think people get lost in the out of sight, out of mind, and they're like, well, I don't know any survivors. I'm like, actually, let's check the numbers. 1 in 3 women reported, 1 in 6 men reported. You know somebody. Maybe you don't know that you know, or maybe they don't even know themselves. We all know someone, and it's like a good reminder, like coming to the show, like people always walk away like, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, what kind of audience do you get? Do you get people who are just expecting titties and then they're like, knowledge?
Yeah, we have had those, and it is.
They're like, got me. That is
interesting. But it's funny because Jimaneika and I host, and we're very silly.
We're a mess.
And we're a mess, but in a great
it's a
way.
Good mess. It's a cute mess.
Yeah, it's a very joyful show, which a lot of people, I think, would not expect. And they come in, if they know that it's about sexual assault survival, they come in and they're
shrink.
like real nervous.
Yeah. Until Bitsy reminds them.
I know, right? And unless they're a survivor, actually, I feel like a lot of survivors come in and they're like, whoa, like a space for us. Because there's queer spaces, there's mommies groups, there's groups for vitiligo and groups for asthma and stuff. But there's not a lot of groups where survivors can like be together and be like, hey, I know these feelings too.
Right.
And also, I'm going to take today to not be sad about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah. It's like we can all hang out. We all have a shared understanding of like part of what we're going through, but we're not like in the dirges. Like we're not just like together crying. Like we're together just witnessing each other.
Nice.
I think one of my favorite lines was when we were in North Carolina. You're like, hey, motherfuckers, you're allowed to laugh.
Yeah, they were really scared of like enjoying my jokes. I'm like the punchline kind of person in the show. And I'm a punchline.
Well.
But I kind of want, because I want them to know that like because a lot of people know my history of assault because I'm very open about it. And so when they see me being okay and joyous and joyful, they feel more allowed to be okay and to be like, yes, I can know that like sexual assault is a thing, and I can also not be completely depressed all the time about it. Yeah. And work towards like bettering the lives of survivors.
I think normalizing the conversation is what we need to like continue focusing on, and I think we do that by having the conversation. Like, you're allowed to laugh. You don't always have to be sad. People are like, I don't. No, you don't. Because that's something that happened to you.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be your entire life story. It's just a chapter, maybe a few, but it doesn't have to be the only thing you're known for because you're an amazing person.
Right. So as far as producing a show like this, I mean, what's different from producing a show about survivors for survivors as opposed to just producing like any other kind of random show you do?
So yeah, it's a lot more because I've been producing theater since I was my first show that I produced I was like 16.
Oh whoa!
And I think it was some kind of Edward. No, I know. I'm such a nerd.
Recognize
Yes.
I'm confused.
I know, and it's
I didn't do the theater.
I produced a really silly like series of one act plays, and like going from that to like, which was like very white cisgender male centered, even the plays were, and really finding my path as a producer through dance, through performance art, and through, because I'm a woman, I'm queer, and polyamorous, and so realizing that the type of theater that I was making wasn't even for my community. I was like, wait, this isn't even for me. I'm making stuff that's not even speaking to me.
Right.
Like, that's nuts. And so then I took on the role of, or not role, but identity, which not everyone has to, but I take on the identity of survivor. And so then I was like, okay, like what would since I want to help survivors, what do I want to see? What would make me feel good? as a survivor, if I wanted to go out amongst other survivors and feel good. And so at first, for me, it was burlesque and being very like owning my sexual body, like owning my physical body. But then when talking with like a couple other survivors, some people were like, well, I feel really sexy when I do stand up, or I feel really sexy when I do sword swallowing. My friend Asia, who's a sword swallower, she's like very gothic and whatever, and like that's her like. That's part of her like sexy feelings is like really dark fun stuff. And so I was like, oh, like maybe instead of just a physically sexual, more nude show, we allow people themselves to determine what's sexy to them, which to me is the opposite of rape. So basically, rape is someone deciding for you all of your sexual what should be choices. What you're, you don't get to pick what you're wearing. You don't get to pick how your body is feeling that day. You don't get to pick who it is. Like, it's all of the choice is absolutely taken away from you. So to me, the opposite of rape really is being on stage and doing exactly whatever I want, however I want to show myself sexually to the audience. Now, within that, where things do get a little dicey, is some survivors want to come up and they want to tell their story, or they want to do something, I don't know, maybe they're sexist, or maybe they're racist, or maybe they have some like real problematic issues. We do not allow, so we don't allow recounting of trauma because it can be hard for other survivors to hear.
Sure.
And then we don't allow, ageism, sexism, racism, sizeism, anything like that.
Any isms.
And it's, isms are out. Yeah, isms are out. Basically to keep everyone in the room safe. And then we also say, if there is, because sometimes some of the pieces can be intense, like they'll never recount a rape or molestation or anything, but some of them can just be very emotional and might cause feelings to come up. So we always allow people that if they want to leave the room, they can.
Sometimes you have to give people that permission. To be like, if this is hard, you can leave and it's okay. And they're like,
which so many theater people would be like, what? Like, they either feel validated that they've pissed you off if you leave, or they're like real mad that you've left.
I want to add that I really love that the focus of the show is also to be intersectional. Like, what kind of people are in this show? Oh, they're all white. No, redo it. Recast it. Because it's important for people to see that all survivors and allies look different. Instead of a lot of things on television and things, they don't look like my black queer ass. Like, they don't. Yeah. And I can't relate to that. So seeing myself in certain things, you're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, we actually the show has actually become a place for a lot of trans and gender fluid people, which has been super cool. Partially because I didn't expect it, but also because so much of our world lately has been trying, or so much of my immediate world, I should say, has been like, how do we do intersectionality? I don't understand how to make that happen. And so I was like, what do you mean, how do you make it happen?
Just do it.
You just do it, and you don't give spots to only white people. You don't give spots to only cisgender people. Like, you don't give spots to only straight people. Like, that's how you do it. Yeah. And so there's actually the people that come are so diverse and have kind of sprouted little groupies in different areas in the show, which is really lovely.
It's adorable. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So, Jim, you kind of hinted at us a little bit, but I'd love to hear more about you kind of in the work that you did coming from a more, I guess, quote-unquote institutional setting into the art. Like, could you tell me a little bit about your background in survivor networks up until More Than No?
So, yeah, I have worked in lots of different levels of mental health care. But for me, the connection is people that are survivors are always looking for, or not always, I won't say always, are looking for, a way to, express themselves. And a lot of it has been through art. Even working in mental health facilities, all ages. I've worked with teenagers to, 90-year-olds. There's something that always is such a connection that makes people smile is art. And again, art can look different. And so bringing that to More Than No, I'm like, oh, this is a thing. But being in a facility, it's totally different. Like, I'm always on guard, ready for something to happen. And it's even just working with survivors. You never know what can happen. You never know when triggers can come up. And so even when we have our shows, I'm always hyper aware, and I'm a room scanner because that's just who I am. And even like being able to support Bitsy as she does the show, like I'm always like, I see her moving. Let me give her something.
She does. She's like a nanny or something when I do the show, because I'm like losing my mind trying to make sure that I don't like offend anyone, or like that everything that the show is like set up in the right order and the songs are in the right order, and I feel like a crazy person.
Run around very interesting some
sure
days.
do.
And so it's for me, it's still similar that I'm still continuing to hold space. And that's kind of just my jam.
Yeah.
And so holding space in a different way. So now I'm just on a stage holding space, or every now in a royal blue moon, I'll actually perform, and like still being mindful of what I'm performing and checking in and like still visually watching, like, is anyone doing anything? Because that's just like how my brain has been trained. Like I've scanned this pool area like 6 times. Just because I'm like,
service,
I don't know these people.
And I'm like, we're at the pool? I forgot. I'm like, I forgot about that.
I'm like, I need to make sure no one's walking too fast. But that's also with the show. Like, I watch the door. Like, we have door people, and we have an amazing door person most of the time. But also, like, being mindful of who's walking in and who, when they walk in, what are they doing when they walk in? Because you could buy a ticket and still be a shitty person.
Yeah, we've actually had like some problematic people come into the show sometime, and it's so funny to me that like
Thanks for the money, though.
I thanks for the money, but also like what now here?
Yeah.
Well, because it's really funny because like people, I actually right before Jim came, I got kind of like berated by an audience member for someone coming into the show. That it was like my fault. Like I should have stopped this problematic guy from coming to the show. But at the end of the day, like what we're teaching is it's not my fault that he's problematic.
Just get shirts that say, it's not my fault, I told you.
It's still not my fault. It has never been my fault. It will never be my fault when he's the one that's doing it.
Accountability.
You know? And like luckily at the next show I was able to say like, hey, I heard that people were saying that I should have stopped this thing, and you know what? I am not him. Yeah. Like and just like a survivor is not the thing that happened to them. Yeah. They can't, their outfit's not going to change what that person does. Wow. There's only so much you can make a safe space, and we do our darndest for sure. And it's like, as far as like the guy, like he wasn't like the most unsafe person, but it's still funny how people always put the blame on the person who doesn't have control. Yeah. We have as much as we can. Right. But there's only so much control you can have when it's somebody else doing something, you know?
What's interesting to thinking about, like, just, I mean, not having been in that room, but understanding, like, as a theater person, I've been on stage, I've been holding space as an MC before, and I've also been an audience member when I see things go sideways, and it's like we're looking for mommy and daddy to, like, fix this, because, it's, you know, I'm just an observer. And, like, it kind of speaks to, like, the role of bystander. I mean, it does kind of have this weird metaphor of, like, bystander intervention, where it's like, well, I might not be the person with the microphone, but I can still say something. Yeah. And maybe I should if I'm in a position where I can. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it makes me wonder about, you know, when you are doing a show that has edgy stuff, when people are feeling confronted about their own expectations or their own maybe problematic behavior in the past, like, I'm sure that can bring up a lot of bad behavior. It could probably make people act out in certain ways. I mean, do you have a line that you have to walk with, like, holding space for people to feel unsafe or uncomfortable in their process?
You know, what I didn't mention that actually is what helps this is so every piece. So I curate how the lineup goes, and I have a thing that I send to the performer. So I ask performers. Personally, like I send email to performers that I'm interested in, and I have a sheet that says these are the rules, and one of the rules is that there has to be hope in the piece. There has to be levity and hope, especially at the end of the piece, and that combined with telling them that we don't recount trauma really makes for less of that of those really intense feelings to be a possibility. Most of the feelings that come out of each piece or the show in general are a feeling of upwardness and of hope.
And acknowledgement.
And acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement for sure, on different levels. Because each piece is just so different. And I think the goal also is when you do it, because you do it amazingly. I can't do that. It's like each piece will speak to someone differently in the room. Mm-hmm. So people will receive and be like, girl, did you see that one part? And the other people are like, no, but did you see this part? And so that's why I would say, like, people are like, well, what am I going to expect? I don't know what you should expect, because it's a different experience for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think if we've had anyone, like you said, that's really, really gone, like, left or whatever, as far as emotions. And I would say the people who would the most would actually be the performers, because they often push themselves to do something. They honestly, you're not going to be able to go to a cabaret and do your burlesque piece about rape at many places. Yeah. So a lot of the times, or your stand-up about, you know, being a survivor. So a lot of the times where the emotions lie for me is afterwards with the performers, and like holding space for them to feel what they just felt on stage.
Yeah. It's funny because I've definitely been in rooms where I've seen like storytelling events, and I've seen some people go off script and use an audience as group therapy. And
you can't see our head. No!
We are not your therapy room.
We also note that.
Yeah.
At the end of the show, like, you know, you may have had a few drinks, but what we're not going to do right now is look to the person to your left or right and tell them all your feelings.
Yeah, we say, like,
save it.
Like, you've been drinking, it's late on a Saturday night, you've got a lot of feelings, write them down in your notes.
Text yourself.
Yeah, and wait until the morning when you've had your coffee and ask someone if you can talk with them about it. I also give out my email, and I'm like, if you would like to send me an email, because a lot of people will want to come up to me after the show or come up to Jimaneika and be like, let me tell you what happened when I was 3. And I'm like, oh, I've had 3 gin and tonics. Like, please don't do that.
I can normally see, because I've been drinking just like water, and I'm like, I get into like real mom mode with this one. It became recent. I'm like, she's panicking. Actually, Bitsy's gonna take a break right now. Did you have a question? No, you know what? How about you do this? And people are like, oh, I know I just heard you say this 10 minutes ago, didn't you? Yes, I did.
Yes, I sure did. Yeah.
Well, that's a skill set though, Jim, being able to like steer somebody when they're just in the vector of like share mode and be like, so here's a more appropriate way of using that.
That's 10 years of chasing teenagers down the block.
Yep.
That's all that is.
Wow. So do you have any like success stories from like performers or audience members that you'd like to
share?
You
have stories. Talk about your friend.
Which friend?
The one that was able to come out as trans.
Oh, yes. So a friend of mine, this is a great, like, this made me feel so awesome. A friend of mine just recently transitioned or began transitioning, and she had never been to a show. She lives in LA, but she'd never been to a show. And she messaged me and was like, I'm coming to the show next month. And I was like, okay, girl, like, don't worry about it. Like, no worries. And she's in theater as well. And she said, I just want you to know, like, and I hadn't seen her in like 2 years. She was like, I just want you to know, every time I see you ask for performers, because often I'll go on Facebook and I'll be like, I need POC, trans, like, I need, because I'm trying to do the, like, make it all different. And she was following all of the Facebook invites and all the posts for performers and whatever. And she started seeing how I was asking for trans comics and trans dancers and speakers and whatnot. And she slowly kind of like, she was already looking at herself intensely. But she was like, that really helped me. Like, I haven't even been to your show yet. And just like the fact that you all are really trying to give us our space in this conversation really helped me know that it was okay. Like, it's okay to be who I am, and it's okay that, because she's in her 30s and she's like very nervous about transitioning to what she thinks is late in life. And she was like, it's really great that I haven't even been to your show, and like just you producing it is like helping people look at themselves.
It's a nice reminder to the longitudinal. Like, sometimes you just like one impression is not enough. Like, one show that centers Black women is not enough.
Yeah,
right?
no.
constantly reminding people, like, this is an open invitation. We want to, and so that, you know, maybe first impression is like, I'm scared, but like by number 6, where you're like still very clearly want to include everybody, still very clearly devoted to everyone. I mean, I think one of the things I hear so much in sex positive community and like sex party community is like, oh, well, there aren't any kinky black people or whatever. Or, you know, there aren't any trans lesbians. It's just like, well, you know, is it that there aren't any, or they don't feel safe coming to your party?
Yeah.
It's probably the latter.
Probably the latter. Yeah. And it's really like so easy to be able to give people the space. Like, as a producer, I'm like, I find it hilarious that there's so many shows that are like very white or very cisgender or very, you know, or have no mothers or so, you know, like there's like no diversity in whatever way there is. And like, I'm like, all you have to do is do it. Yeah. It's not even trying. You just do it.
My favorite is when people are like last minute, like, hey, our show is like tomorrow. Do you know anyone? No, I don't. Because these people should not be considered as a last thought. Why didn't you think about them before? Someone must have said something to you. Oh my God, I can't help you. Sorry. Yeah. Because you actually don't care. Yeah. I think that's a big problem.
Yeah. Well, I think it's nice to be. It's funny that the show has been like for survivors and survivors' allies, but now we actually have a lot of people that are not survivors at all, and they are just part of a minority, and are just like, hey, we've heard your show is comfortable.
It's
for
safe.
Me, you know, and like I want to come back and I want to see it and I want to perform in it because it's comfortable for me to be there because you've made a point that I am allowed.
Wow.
You know?
Well, it's interesting because this makes me think of the last night on the keynote panel, somebody had raised a question about how to ensure diversity without making it tokenism, which I think is a really interesting...
Yeah.
It's a balance.
Yeah. It's like, can you tell me a little bit about your thoughts around how to do that?
I think it also has to do with intention. Right? Because like I said, if you're just reaching out to me last minute, like, oh my gosh, I just happened to find your website. My event is on Saturday. I've had that happen to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, who else is on your panel and why are you waiting to the last minute? Oh, well, because anytime you add because I now have deleted your email because I think your intention is you're doing it just because you don't want to hear anyone's mouth. But clearly someone has already raised the question. Versus you're like, hey, we really want to do this. And we may not always know all the people. But like, there's someone that knows someone. Like, it's the intention of actually trying, like putting it on Facebook, tweeting it, asking someone else. Like, instead of just being like, we are doing this because we have to. Not because we want to.
Yeah.
We want
and
to look
like,
good as opposed to we actually want to serve people.
Yeah. And also, like, as a producer... You should, like, for me, I feel like one of the different feelings that, or the way that Jimaneika and I and the rest of the group come at it is we want to hear a black comedian. We want to see a trans woman sing. We want to see an asexual person tap dance.
It's lovely. It's so good.
We want...
We have it all.
We're not just trying because someone got mad at us.
No.
Like, we want to know these perspectives. Yeah. Like, we actively want to know them. And I think that makes a huge difference, is like, we're yearning to know these things, not just putting them in there so we'll feel good about ourselves.
And that's what makes us better people. Not just us in general, but not just us specifically, but in general, meeting different people is how we grow. Right? You'd be like, in the show, you're like, oh, I've never,
Yeah, I never thought that way.
I love people like, Yeah. Or even just having people come at the end of the show and be like, thank you. Because I didn't feel like I could call myself a survivor. Because people often be like, well, this thing didn't happen to me. And we're like, these are ways you can be a survivor. We don't do it all the time, but sometimes people are like, thank you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes being able to be like, I'm okay, and just putting that title, like, I've gone through this, it's not my whole thing, gives people that space to exhale.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, too, because in so many communities we have this kind of in or out type thing, like this threshold you have to cross to be blank enough, queer enough, black enough, trans enough, all the things. But it never occurred to me that there's a threshold for like survivor enough.
Yeah, it's
fucked up.
Very weird. Although I will say we're the one community that I don't think judges each other on being survivor enough.
Okay.
Because it's not like, like if you want one of our director of outreach, Katie Johnson, she's super amazing. She was more recently, and she's very open about all of this, by the way. She was more recently assaulted, and she considers her assault like less dramatic or less intense or whatnot. But she is 100% a survivor to us, and like we don't, we don't even question. Like, it's funny because she still sometimes questions it, but for the survivor community, like we don't even we can't even begin to question that her autonomy was taken in that moment, and that she wasn't able to give consent in that moment. Like that would be nuts. Like, she's still a survivor along with us, no matter what the rest of us went through.
It's only the outside people that are looking in, but it's also those people that are trying to justify the nonsense. And they're like, well, did you? Shut up, yes. But it happens a lot, if watching and reading all these news stories that are so disgusting to read. People be like, well, he only kind of did this one thing, or she only did this one. Like, no. Did they say yes? Were they aware that this was happening? Did they support all these things? Were they conscious? Yeah. How about things like that? And they're like, well, that one time she flirted. No. Yeah.
Like, honoring the emotional impact, whether and the details themselves are actually kind of moved.
No one cares.
It doesn't matter. Like, and also everybody's threshold for things are different. And just because you've gone through more quote unquote bunny ears intense stuff, it doesn't mean that someone who hasn't gone through something that has gone through something maybe a little less intense isn't hurting just as much as you might be.
Sure. Well, it plays into this narrative that the only real quote unquote rape is the dark alley, the stranger in the dark alley.
Stranger in the dark alley.
And that every other form of non-consensual touch somehow doesn't count.
Yeah, it's a lesser violation.
Yeah.
It's no, they're all garbage. They're all garbage. They're all garbage. They all suck. And we should all be healing. Yeah. We're all on the same team. Yeah.
Wow. So tell me. So now, Cabaret Consensual is a show, and so that's a thing that people can see on a monthly basis.
Yes.
And this is in Los Angeles.
Yes. It's in Hollywood at 3 clubs.
Second Saturday, almost all the time.
Every month.
Almost every month.
The summers.
Sometimes we like to take a break.
What? Gotta give yourself permission to take care of yourself.
All right, and Big Club, man, I used to hang out there a lot back in my LA days.
Yay!
And then this is a part, and I know you mentioned at the top of the show, but I'd love to kind of circle back to More Than No, which is this separate organization and that the show is kind of a part of.
So it's the nonprofit that the show kind of helps fund
it's like
and
the umbrella.
keep people intertwined with us.
So can you tell me more about what More Than No does and kind of larger?
So yes, we actually just got our official 501c3 nonprofit status through the Effing Foundation.
So you can.
So it's a fiscal sponsorship, but we do take coins. Thank you so much.
We take coins. And we just got that. So now we're finally before we had that, we were doing Cabaret Consensual. Jimaneika and I had taught a couple classes. I run a peer support group right now. It's mostly on Facebook. It's a private survivor group that's a lot about self-care and daily check-ins and things like that. And we've done things raise money to buy hygiene kits for the homeless, which we usually donate to the Downtown Women's Center.
Currently still raising money to send survivors.
Yes, we just partnered with Sunlight Retreat for Rape Survivors, which is in San Diego. And it's a full, all-inclusive 3-day retreat for survivors of sexual assault. Run by this lovely woman named Brittany, who started it after she was sexually assaulted in the Army. And she realized there was nothing that was an affordable option for, or even close to affordable, because I believe it's $250 for a 3-day weekend, because a lot of it is donated by
that includes shelter and food
it includes housing and a nice hotel Airbnb thing, and but she started that to help. Because she realized there was nothing after she was assaulted. She was like, "Holy shit! This giant thing has happened to me," and there's not a lot of resources except for books and a therapist. Mm-hmm. And so we funded. We're covering 3 or 4 spots at that this August.
Nice.
So that was all the stuff we were doing before nonprofit status. And so now we're hoping to add a bunch of things, hopefully more education. We have, what do we have? The LGBT class.
We have a class that Bitsy and I wrote together, Surviving and Thriving, which can be found on the website. There's a link on our website. And it's basically a class. It's not therapy. And so that's what I always want to note to people. Like, it's like a support with therapy, like how to reconnect with your body. Because sometimes most therapists don't get all into that. How to have the tough conversations with your partners, with your family members. Also, like, how you're allowed to masturbate and, like, different ways. Like, Bitsy does a section about kink, because I'm the best about knowing all those jams. And then we talk about, like, different sex toys, because sometimes people are like, oh, they're vibrators. And they're like, vibrator. And you're like, there's more. There's more.
There's vibrators.
And so we do have that one class, and we wanted to do it online because we do understand how hard it is sometimes for survivors to show up in spaces. And sometimes it is easier to be at home and do it at your own pace and be like, today, this is what I can do. Yeah. And give yourself that permission instead of being like, I'm going to go sit in this 2-hour class and break down.
Yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, so we're hoping to add more now that we have, and we got a grant. Jimaneika and I got a grant through the Effing Foundation as well. So now we're able to fund both of us learning more, both of us traveling more, in order for Jimaneika to speak. And yeah, we want to add more education, more resources for survivors. Like, we want to create resources and we want to get resources to survivors, however we can, which it's so crazy when you look into it, how little resources there are, like, advertised for survivors, because nobody wants to talk about it. It's crazy.
I think also it's really important. I wrote this class a few weeks ago, and I just haven't done anything with it. I wrote an ally class, finally. And it's like, most people are like, don't know how to be an ally. Mm-hmm. Like, they're like, I want to do this thing in support, but I don't know what to do. Yeah. So I think that's also something we want to include in, because there's a lot of people that are like, I love my partner, I love my friend, I love my child, but I don't know how to do the thing. So I think that's more things that we want to include, because Cabaret Consensual isn't just for survivors. Like, More Than No isn't just for survivors, it's for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like even if people aren't necessarily in Los Angeles, they can still come to More Than No and get more resources and figure out maybe how to find what they need.
Yeah, we actually have Katie Johnson, who is the director of outreach that I mentioned. She actually runs the Instagram for us, which is great if you need just like a positive, like an intersectional feminist positivity boost.
Nice.
Follow that Instagram. Good. She nails it. It's More Than No.
Okay.
N-O. We also have a great Twitter run by Emma Servant, who's also killing it. Intersectional Feminism Lord. And what else am I missing? Oh, and we have the class online. We also have a documentary. I know. I forgot to mention that.
It gets interesting. You're like, dang, we sound good.
I know, we do sound good. We sound real good.
Hello.
So there was a documentary done about a year and a half ago about myself, right before Jimaneika joined. Basically, an independent filmmaker kind of found me, and there was an article written about me called "Will Strip for Change," because when I started Cabaret Consensual, this is kind of sad and also kind of beautiful because I love sex workers. I realized that one of the only ways that people would listen to me was if I was naked.
There you go.
And I was like, I have something to say about sexual assault, and so I guess I'm going to get naked. Like,
here's my butt.
So that's kind of how I got into burlesque. So the first Cabaret Consensual was me doing a piece about being assaulted, basically. And it's a surprisingly uplifting piece. It's
extremely beautiful.
Yeah, it's surprisingly beautiful and uplifting despite the topic. So yeah, there's a documentary kind of about the first cabaret and about how it all started. And it's a lot about how art and specifically physical performance can help a survivor. So we have that as well if you want to learn more.
Great. Wonderful. Well, so I think that actually sounds like a great place to leave it. So where can people find you? I mean, you mentioned already the Instagram stuff, but individually, collectively, where can people find you on the webs if they want to learn more about you?
So individually, you can find my own website also, sewjim.com, SEWJIM.com. And all my social media is Jimaneika, JIMANEKIA. And if you need a coach, because now Juicebox is back, if you download the Juicebox app and you utilize Jimaneika as the coach, again, that's JIMANEKIA, you get 60% off your first week.
What? Juicebox is great. I haven't mentioned it on the podcast yet, but I've been doing a lot of writing for Juicebox, and it is an app where you can get connected with specifically sex educators and sex coaches to help you learn more things about your body and your relationship and get better at stuff. And Jimaneika is one of those amazing human beings. So yeah, if you're curious about that kind of one-on-one thing, and if you live in a place where you might not be able to find somebody who's sensitive to your needs, you can do it virtually.
Yes.
You can text with somebody. And you can get better at sex stuff.
Yeah.
And for More Than No, we're at morethanno.org. And the website is the thing that has the documentary and the class and all of that. And then for me, you can find me at Bitsy LaBourbon, like the drink, on Instagram and Twitter. Warning, I'm a very, very sexual person. So
you're welcome.
So you're welcome. So it's private, but if you want to follow me, you can send a little request. You might learn a whole lot of other things about me on that one.
It's true.
It's real true. But yeah, and if you want to follow More Than No, we're on all things: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
And if you're in LA, come see the show.
Come see the show.
Well, thank you so much for being on Artgasm. I love you both. I appreciate you both. You're amazing human beings. So thank you for sharing a little bit of your knowledge.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Supporting survivors.
Hey, my pleasure. All right, take it easy.
And that is it for this week's episode of Artgasm. Thank you, as always, for joining us, and thank you for bearing with our sound issues. Once again, if you want to help improve our sound quality, please go to patreon.com/artgasm. Every dollar that people support the podcast with means that they get access to free episodes, and also they can help me get a digital recorder that will make a lot of better sound quality. I will be back in 2 weeks with a better sounding interview, not necessarily smarter or more thoughtful and lovely as Jimaneika and Bitsy, but probably better sound quality in general. So do stay tuned. Please subscribe if you're not already subscribing. You can find our podcast anywhere you get podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, all the places. And again, if you feel so inclined, please do consider leaving a review. I know it doesn't seem like it does anything, but it really actually does. So leaving a review on Apple Podcasts is a really great way to support the podcast for freezies. And we like freezies. As always, if you want to learn more, if you want the links to all the things that we mentioned, go to artgasmcast.com, and the show notes for each episode appear there about usually the day of the episode releasing. And finally, if you want to follow us on the social medias, please do so. We're on the Twitters, we're on the Mastodons, we are on all the places. So look for Artgasmcast or Allison Moon, and you will probably find us and follow and engage with us there. All right, until next time.